Hey everybody, it's Eric with Chaotic Goods, and today's video we're going to be talking about the water element within your Pantheon deck. Now, I've already covered fire and I've covered wind, but we're finally tackling water, and this one was a little bit harder for me because I don't really like to play water. Not really my style of gameplay. It's very control oriented and being reactive instead of proactive within Grand Archive, and that's kind of why it just took me a little bit to compile a list. So take this list with a bigger grain of salt than my fire and my wind list. I do think some of the cards in here are just generically good effects, and we are gonna leave out things like Fracturized, Frostworn Paladin, Song of Frost, because those are just generally good water cards that you would want to run anyway. Again, like my fire and my wind list, I wanted to cover cards that you may not even know about, something that you kind of just didn't even think existed because you're too standard brained, and deck building in Pantheon is so much different than it is in standard. Now, before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to TCG Architect. They are this video's sponsor. I am putting out written lists of these videos along with a deck tech that I did for my Pantheon, my Tenaris Pantheon list that you can find in the links down below. But huge shout out to them. They have a deck builder. They cover a bunch of community content from written articles to videos to deck builders. It's a great website, so make sure to check them out. Now, without further ado, let's just dive right into the first card that I think you should be playing in your water list. Now, if you were level 3 playing a level 3 deck, sorry Nico players, we're waiting, but Pearled Prayer is a very crazy card. It is a 2-cost Exalted card that is a action cleric spell at fast speed that says draw a card in your memory. If you activated this card during your main phase, recover 7. Otherwise, recover 4. It's a recover 7 and draw a card for 2 if it's during our turn, or it's a draw a card and recover 4 for 2 on our opponent's turn. Now, if you watch my fire video, you understand how annoying recovery can be in Pantheon, and that's just because being a one of, you kind of don't anticipate your opponent recovering. So being able to tech in cheeky little cards like this and be like, hey, I'm going to recover 7. That's crazy. Or, you know, your opponent's going in for the kill, you play it at fast speed, you recover 4, you draw a card into a memory. It's just really good card. It's doing everything we want it to. We're recovering, we're drawing a card, and it's a 2-cost. The only requirement is Exalted, which most Pantheon decks are level 3 decks unless you're playing Nico, Polhawk, or Vanitas. Pretty good card. I would highly recommend it. If I wasn't playing Nico, I would just be putting this card in my deck. That's how good I think this is. So this card is my favorite on the list because I think she is just insane. Now, I did tweet about this, or put a post on X about this, whatever we're gonna call it now, a couple weeks back, that I found this card and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And there was a little bit of back and forth as some people didn't totally agree with me, but I think at Pantheon, this card is just absolutely insane. And that is Floodward Sergeant. Now, she's a 4-cost, which is a little steep, but again, in Pantheon, we're drawing a bunch of cards and we're water. So we're drawing a bunch of cards anyway. Maybe we're playing fractals, so it doesn't totally matter how many cards that we have. Now, she is a ally, warrior human, and she is a 1/3. Now, her effect is a little bit long, so bear with me here, but she is taunt, and then if damage would be dealt to Floodward Sergeant, prevent that damage, apply this replacement effect once each turn. So again, we're gonna do keywords here, once each turn. So she's a 1/3 ally, which, you know, generic stat-wise, she's not like the best. She is a taunter that your opponents have to hit at least twice in order to kill her. So yeah, you know what? They swing into a dungeon guide for 1, it negates that damage. Now they have to swing into it with a bigger ally. So it's a constant taunt that requires multiple resources to be spent in order to kill her, which I think is just absolutely absurd. It's not combat damage, it's not spell damage, it's if damage would be dealt, negate that damage. So if your opponent's gonna blast a spell on her, hey, it doesn't matter, it's negated. Like, this card is really crazy because there's 4 players in Pantheon and the replacement effect is each turn. So your turn, your opponent's turn, and then so on and so forth, you know, diagonally next to you. So it's just really good. Plus her art is absolutely insane. She's beautiful. Maybe she's not a required card. You know, you do have Frostworn Paladin, right? A little bit bigger of a body. You can put that buff counter on her by getting a floating memory, but hey, maybe you want both. Having taunt on the board is so good in Pantheon that you want a couple taunters, maybe some interceptors as well. If you are let's just say, a veteran to Grand Archive, you understand why this card was banned. And that's Icebound Slam. Now, Icebound Slam is absolutely absurd. This card was banned for a reason, and it's not going to be the only banned card that shows up on the list when it comes to standard, but hey, this is Pantheon, so we don't care. We don't care about banned cards because we can only play one of it anyway. For those of you who don't know what Icebound Slam does, it is a 7-cost attack guardian sword that has a class bonus. This card costs 2 less to activate. So, we're playing 5, if we're Nico, which is the crazy part here. But on attack, put the top 5 cards of your deck into your graveyard. Then, if there are 5 or more water element cards in your graveyard, Icebound Slam gets +5. And it's a 3 power. So automatically, it's hitting for 3. You have the 5 cards in your graveyard. There's very little graveyard hate from what I've seen in Pantheon. So this is going to be pretty easy for you to trigger that +5. So you're just swinging for 8. Yeah, like it's absolutely nuts. And plus we're putting cards into our graveyard that we want in water, especially if we're Nico. It's just such a crazy card. Plus, if you're Nico, you can play 2 of this card because of the Proxia. I mean, come on. Like, why would you not? The only reason I'm playing a Pantheon Nico deck is because of Icebound Slam and the fact that I can play 2 of them because it's that crazy. I can generate one and then I can just dig to find this one. It's so absurd, and you're just hitting for 8. You're milling cards. It's great. Great card. It was banned for a reason. Like I mentioned, Icebound Slam is not the only card that was banned in standard that we can now play in Pantheon because it's not banned. And that other one is Lost in Thought. It's an absolutely absurd card. It deserves to be banned. Let's be honest. But its cost is X, and it is a action mage skill that is a fast speed. So its effect reads, you may banish up to X cards with floating memory from your graveyard. Draw a card for each card banished this way. And it has floating memory. This card's crazy. It deserves to be banned in standard just as much as Icebound Slam did, but we're in Pantheon, it doesn't matter. We can see one of, and if you're not running Lost in Thought in Pantheon, you probably should. We want to draw cards. We love drawing cards. So this is exactly what it's going to do. And because it's an X cost, we can banish as much as we want and draw as much as we need to. Okay, so the next card on the list is actually one that was mentioned by main deck Dan when Pantheon was first announced. If you haven't checked out that video, go check it out. He covers a lot of like niche cards that no one's really ever played before, which is kind of what I've been doing in these element lists or these element videos as well, because I've shown my decks to some people who are like competitive standard players, and they've looked at cards and they're like, I've quite literally never seen this card before. So there are just some cards that exist in Grand Archive that are crazy effects, but no one knows what they do because they just don't get played in standard. And this is one of those, and that's Drowned Exorcist. So she's a 4-cost, 2/2 ally. She's a cleric human, and she has a level 2 on enter effect that each player banishes all non-water element cards from their graveyard. Graveyard hate. Like I said, it was not something that's seen very often, but there are some ally cards like this or Sasha in Wind where you can trigger it and suddenly it's a big deal. Now, she also has Deluge 8 effect, which is on death. If you have 8 or more water element cards in your graveyard, draw 2 cards. Graveyard hate for your opponents and for yourself. So if you have normal cards that are, let's say, floating memory or something like that, you're playing Nico, I'm going to keep bringing it up because Nico's crazy in Pantheon. Banish those cards from all players' graveyards, and then if she dies, you're just drawing 2 cards. The effect of Graveyard Hate plus drawing 2 is why I think that she is a really good fit into water decks, but this is just one of those cards that I think is really good, and it's why main deck Dan, he mentioned it. That's why I wanted to mention it as well, because I think that it's pretty good. So next up is a card from DOA Altar. So we're going back several years here, and this is another recovery effect, Revitalizing Cleanse. It is a 5-cost, fast cleric spell that reads, reveal all cards in your memory, recover X, where X is the amount of water element cards revealed this way, and then draw a card. So you're drawing a card, you're revealing all cards in your memory, recovering X based on water element cards revealed. All right, so this is another Exalted card. So unfortunately, us Nico players out there, we can't play it. There's probably a good reason for that, because this card, Dynastic Whirlpool, is a 3-cost Exalted action cleric spell at slow speed. It reads, each opponent puts the top 15 cards of their deck into their graveyard. I don't really think there's anything else that I need to say about that. Everybody's just milling, except you, which is fine. Really, really insane effect to just say, hey, everybody mill 15. Now, this is Liquidation. It is a 2-cost, slow mage action spell that reads Deluge 10. If there are 10 or more water element cards in your graveyard, deal 7 damage to target unit. We're playing water. It's pretty easy to just get rid of cards in our deck into the graveyard and have that Deluge 10. So we're just gonna 2-cost, deal 7 damage to target unit. Really good burst damage. Honestly, 7 is so much in Grand Archive that you're just milling yourself. You pull out Liquidation, you pop it for 2, 7 damage to somebody, and you just hit him with Drown. Really, really good. I love this card. So the next couple of cards are actually all very similar effects, but very minor differences between them. So the first one here is Dredging Streams. Now this is a 2-cost action cleric spell at fast speed that says banish target card from a graveyard. And then it does have a level 2+ floating memory. So graveyard hate, specifically for target card. It's really good into annoying cards that your opponents may have. Maybe they have floating memory, maybe there's like a liminal guide, maybe it's some other specter when you're playing against Analysis, maybe it's the Lorraine ult, you don't want her to trigger it again. There's so many cards that we can just focus target hate that this is very, very good. Now the next one that does essentially the same effect is Seasprite Diver. And that's a 4-cost ally that is a Ranger Automaton. She's a 2/3. She reads, as long as an opponent has 4 or more cards in their graveyard, this card costs 1 less to activate. So she's gonna be a 3-cost in most situations. And then on enter, banish target card in a graveyard. It's a graveyard, so we can banish like a floating memory if we're playing Nico. We can graveyard hate somebody else that has floating memory. There's so many things that we can target banish. Next up on the list is actually going to be some negate effects. Now water has a lot of these negate effects, which are just super obnoxious to play into. That one is Tidal Lock. Now Tidal Lock is a 3-cost fast cleric spell reaction card, and it reads, as long as you have 3 or more water element cards in your graveyard, this card costs 2 less to activate. So we're pretty much just going to activate this for 1 all the time. And it says negate target card activation unless its controller pays 2. Banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So in most situations, your opponent's probably going to pay 2, especially in Pantheon, because there's just so many people just building decks that are say, hey, if it says draw a card, play it. They're going to be able to pay 2. So even if they pay the 2, they're going 2 down just to negate something. You know, maybe it's a high cost, like an ultimate spell, right? Say, seeing like a Tony pay 13 for his ultimate, and you're like, cool, negate it. Maybe they can't pay the 2. That's 15 cards, right? Like, it's pretty crazy. Really situational, but some of these negate cards, they're good to just tax your opponent with, even if you're not negating that card, which is what this next one also kind of does in the list, and that's Regal Expulsion. Now, this is a 2-cost cleric spell reaction at fast speed, and it reads negate target card activation if that card was activated from a material deck. So this one doesn't have any, hey, pay 2, pay whatever to get rid of it. This is just say negate. They bring out, you know, a divine relic, they bring out like a sword or something like that. Heck, there's so many things that are in Pantheon material decks, it's kind of hard to just name them all, but you're just simply saying, hey, negate. It sucks, but sometimes that's just what you go into. And I think Regal Expulsion is one of those ones that, like, it feels kind of like Diablerie. Like, Diablerie steals an opponent's divine relic, but this is simply just saying, hey, I can negate your divine relic, which is just absurd. Now, another negate effect that kind of falls into this line is going to be Engulf. Now, Engulf is a 6-cost fast cleric spell reaction card that reads, level 2+, this card costs 3 less to activate, so we can pay for 3 instead of 6, which is so much better. And it says, negate target non-attack card activation. There's a limited number of things that we would be able to negate with this, because it is specifically saying non-attack card activation, but it is still a negate. When you and your opponents are only playing 1-ofs in Pantheon, being able to just negate the card activation that they only have 1 chance of using is such a slap in the face that it's really annoying to just have these cards taken away from you when they're being negated like this. So really situational, especially with Engulf. But I think the negate is such a big factor in water that you would want to be like, hey, no, you're not going to play that card. And it's just a stop right in your opponent's face that they can't do anything about it. So Glacial Binding goes pretty much in line with Tidal Lock, but the big difference here is going to be that this is an exalted card, and it is a 2-cost action cleric spell reaction at fast speed. But the fact that there's this little text here that reads, you may banish a card with floating memory from your graveyard rather than pay this card's reserve cost is pretty crazy. We could just banish a floating, so we're paying 1 instead of 2 to play this card, and then we can negate target card activation unless its controller pays 3, banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So with Tidal Lock, we can have him pay 2. With Glacial Binding, we can have him pay 3. And there's another card that we can kind of pair with that. If we just wanted to have a bunch of negates in our deck, we can go with Acquiescing Rejection. I probably butchered that first word, so I apologize. But that's a 4-cost fast cleric spell reaction. This is class bonus, cost 1 less to activate. Negate target card activation you don't control unless its controller has you draw 2 cards. Banish the card that had its activation negated this way. So with water, we can do a lot of these negate effects where we're just saying, hey, pay 3, pay 2, I can draw 2, and you can have your card, or you don't let me draw 2, and that card's banished and negated. So there's just so many annoying cards that you can put into your Pantheon deck when you're playing water, and a lot of these one-ofs that do these same effects are really, really strong, and I feel like you could just really be the bad guy when you're playing water in Pantheon, because you have so much control over negating these cards left and right, and you can just mill your opponent for 15. You can just mill them for a bunch of other cards that I didn't even mention. Like, water's so fun as a concept within Pantheon that's why I kind of wanted to give it a try with Nico. Now, my Nico list doesn't have a lot of these control cards because some of them are exalted, so I can't play them, unfortunately. But being able to, mill a bunch of people and get a bunch of lash counters, that's its own thing. It's way more fun to do that. Again, huge shout out to TCG Architect. I'm gonna have a written article that's gonna go over all these cards and kind of why I think they're good and why you should put them into your deck, similar to this video. So that's kind of the list. This was a lot more than just 10 cards because I really wanted to go over the cards that I thought were really good, and there's just some that do the same effect but at different intervals, different costs. So there were just so many good things that water has, and that's why I wanted to put this list together. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch my water Pantheon cards video, and I will see you next time.